Welcome to the Gentle Ledger. Today is Friday, February 20th, 2026. The market felt like it had just unmuted a chaotic group chat, still tired but finally able to breathe in full sentences. Now, let's turn softly to the U.S. indexes and begin with where the day chose to settle. The S&P 500 added 0.7%, closing at 6,909.51, steady, almost matter-of-fact, as if it didn't want to make a big deal of the good news. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.5% to finish at 49,625.97, a gentle lift that felt more like posture correction than celebration. And the Nasdaq Composite climbed 0.9% to 22,886.07, a slightly brighter tone, tech leaning into the bounce with a bit more confidence. Underneath it all, the Russell 2000 was nearly flat, slipping less than 0.1% to 2,663.78. Small caps pausing, not retreating, just taking a breath, gently moving into the corporate highlights, where today's story was shaped by a mix of legal clarity, tariff-sensitive relief, and a few very sharp single-stock moves. In big tech, Alphabet rose 3.7%, moving with the kind of calm strength that suggests investors were ready to lean back into familiar pillars. Amazon gained 2.6%, also catching that same tailwind. Trade uncertainty easing, even if only temporarily. Apple added 1.5%, a quieter climb, but still a clear step upward in a market that was choosing less friction as the day's theme. In consumer and retail, Ralph Lauren rose 2.2%, a tidy, polished move, like a pressed collar after a messy week. In industrials, Comfort Systems jumped 6.5%, one of the day's standout winners, confidence returning to the real economy corners of the tape, at least for an afternoon, and then the day's harsher edges. Akamai Technologies fell 14.1% after its outlook disappointed, a reminder that even on broadly green days, guidance can cut through the calm like a cold draft under the door. Grail sank 50% after discouraging trial results for one of its cancer treatments, one of those moves that doesn't feel like volatility so much as a sudden repricing of hope. And Ep156 rose 4%, lifted by reports it's exploring the building blocks of its own social platform, an ambitious pivot that the market for now decided to reward. Threading through all of that was the bigger headline, a Supreme Court decision striking down a large portion of the administration's tariff framework, an outcome that briefly simplified the world, even if the next chapter still looks uncertain. Now let's drift overseas, where the global mood mirrored the U.S., relieved in places, cautious in others, and very attentive to what comes next. In Asia, Japan's Nikkei 225 fell about 1.1%, a soft pullback that felt less like fear and more like fatigue. Hong Kong's Hang Seng also declined 1.1%, keeping the tone subdued there as well. South Korea stood out in the best way. Its Kospi jumped 2.3%, a bright, confident surge compared with its neighbors. And across the region, with trade policies suddenly back in motion, markets moved as if they were rechecking their assumptions rather than rewriting them. In Europe, the picture was brighter and more unified. The STOXX 600 rose 0.8% to a record close of 630.56, an almost serene kind of strength, new highs but without fireworks. London's FTSE 100 gained 0.5%, continuing its own quiet march upward. And Germany's DAX added 0.81%, another solid up day, with sentiment helped along by the same tariff relief that steadied Wall Street. Now we'll move gently into commodities and bonds, the places where the market's nervous system shows itself. Gold climbed about 2.5%, with futures around $5,125 an ounce, an embrace of safety that didn't contradict the stock rally, but complemented it like keeping a sweater nearby even when the room warms up. Oil was calmer on the day, with WTI around $66.50 a barrel. Little changed, though still carrying the week's underlying tension. In U.S. Treasuries, the 10-year yield eased to 4.08%, a small step down that suggested the bond market was listening closely but not panicking. Sometimes that's the most telling signal of all. Not certainty, just steadiness. And now, quietly, to crypto, where risk appetite showed up but politely, without shouting. Bitcoin traded near $67,690, a modestly firmer tone that fit the day's broader rhythm, cautious relief, not euphoria. Ethereum hovered around $1,971, moving in the same gentle direction, crypto participating in the mood rather than trying to become the mood. Finally, let's close with a small reflective breath. Today's market felt like a hallway after a difficult meeting, still tense in the shoulders, but noticeably lighter in the chest. Relief arrived, not as a party, but as a little extra room to think. And in that space, investors did what they often do. They stepped back toward what feels durable, while still keeping one eye on what might change by morning. Good night.